I have a bad feeling about this. Now, some of you may remember a few months ago I began one of my videos by saying that I had intended to stage an impassioned defense of The Last Jedi, a movie I thought was very much unfairly maligned, but that my favourite YouTube movie critic, Movie Bob Chipman, had beaten me to it. He had written what I consider to be the definitive defence of The Last Jedi, so I just referred people to that. But here we are again. Solo has been out for a couple of weeks and is getting a lot of crap from a lot of places, and again I feel it's kind of undeserved, and people seem to be more reluctant to leap to the defence of this, so I figured, what the hell, I would. Now, this is not a review. This is not a review of the movie, but while we're here, quick capsule review of the movie. Yeah, I loved it. Sorry, I had a great time. If I'm honest, I probably enjoyed it a lot more than I enjoyed Rogue One. I think that's probably going to be regarded as a bit of a blasphemous opinion at the moment, but Rogue One's a funny one, actually. If you go back and look at Rogue One again, it doesn't hold together as well as you think it does. For my money, Rogue One is a movie that's far more obviously been fixed in post than Solo has, although they had sort of similarly troubled productions. The thing about Rogue One is it's just got such a brilliant ending. The last 5 minutes of it are so utterly kick-ass, edge-of-your-seat brilliant that you kind of come out of it on a massive sugar rush. And you tend to forget that basically the 2 hours that preceded that was actually kind of all over the place. Whereas this, I thought, held together perfectly well. I guess maybe it's just a question of expectation, right? Here's the thing. This is the Star Wars movie I've always wanted to see. All right, basically, when they were cranking out the prequels back in the 90s, I was thinking, this is all well and good, George, but what we really want to see is Han and Chewie the early years. And what we want is just a rollicking space western. And lo and behold, that's pretty much what we just got. There's a train robbery. There's, you know, the aging gunslinger who becomes a kind of reluctant and possibly untrustworthy mentor to our young hero. You've got the young hero doing the whole handsome stranger bit. You've got the girl he left behind. Lando is kind of refashioned as Doc Holliday in this, isn't he? He is. He's Doc Holliday in this story. He's the high-rolling gambler with the slightly mannered speech and the elaborate wardrobe and the slightly over-styled facial hair. It's a space western. I don't know what anybody else was waiting for, what anybody else was expecting the story about the young Han Solo to be, but it's pretty much exactly what I was expecting. It's exactly what I wanted, and I came out of it feeling very satisfied that I'd seen what I came to see. But critically, this appears to have been a bit of a meh. Movie Bob's the only guy I know who's on the same page as me. He liked it. Everybody else is kind of meh about it, if they're not just completely about it. I find this slightly bewildering. I think there may be an element of knowing too much. As I've alluded to, this movie had a very troubled production history. It was begun and, as far as I can tell, nearly finished under the directorship of Lord and Miller, who are the guys who made the Lego movie, the brilliant Lego movie. And quite late in the day, Lucasfilm stepped in, fired Lord and Miller, apparently because they were taking a lot of liberties with the screenplay. Lord and Miller kind of threw it out and had everybody improvise. That seems to have been the trouble. But anyway, they were summarily fired and replaced by, of all people, Ron Howard, the archetypal safe pair of hands. And you can see why, just knowing that this is a project that's going to get sneered at, isn't it? You had these wacky independent auteurs, you kicked them out and you got Mr. Reliable in. It's like, I don't know, firing the Pixies and replacing them with Maroon 5. It's like firing Noel Fielding and replacing him with Michael McIntyre. You had the edgy guys and you got rid of the edgy guys and brought in Mr. Safe. And in actual fact, kind of unfair to him, because yeah, Ron Howard is Mr. Reliable, but that's because he makes very good movies. All right, he's making the Da Vinci Code movies these days. I've only seen the first one. It was terrible, but it's based on a terrible book. Couldn't face the other two. But then the last Ron Howard movie I saw before this was great. It was Rush, his Grand Prix movie, the James Hunt versus Niki Lauda movie, in which Niki Lauda is played by the great Daniel Brühl, and James Hunt is played by Thor, which is possibly the best bit of casting ever. That was a great movie, technically, and that's, you know, from a narrative point of view. Other things he's done, like Apollo 13, that's a much cleverer movie than people give it credit for. It's a movie which starts off with an insoluble narrative problem. Most of the people going into that film, maybe not so much now, but most of the people going into that film know how it ends. Spoiler alert, they made it home. So how do you generate any kind of narrative tension there? It's a movie which is all about jeopardy, but you know they're not going to die. And yet the movie succeeds admirably, I think, basically just by underlining just how utterly fucked they actually were. And how incredibly improbable it was that they made it back. So yeah, Ron Howard, perhaps unfairly maligned as a movie maker, but The general perception is that this is a movie which has failed, or at least is underachieving in some way. So what do people mean by that? Well, they're pointing to its box office opening take. Its opening weekend was $83 million, which is very much on the low side for a Star Wars movie. There are many theories as to why this may be. Obviously, it couldn't have been critical word of mouth yet, because the whole point about the opening weekend, plain. The whole point about the opening weekend is there hasn't been any critical word of mouth, or indeed friend-to-friend word of mouth yet. So why weren't people turning up? One possibility is that there was a hashtag boycott Solo campaign. Mainly, as far as I can tell, by sort of slightly dude bro-ish Star Wars fans, angry at what they perceived as generally the wrong turn the series took with Last Jedi, and also the fact that it's getting all a bit feminist and social justice warrior. Arseholes. Anyway, if that was in fact the case, if the dude bros are choosing to boycott Solo to wreak vengeance on Kathleen Kennedy, then boy did they pick the wrong Star Wars movie to boycott, because this is far and away the most dude bro friendly movie of the new crop of Star Wars films. You've got a male protagonist again, not just a male protagonist, everybody's favourite male protagonist, and while I'm here, I completely bought Alden Ehrenreicher's Han Solo. Didn't think I was going to. Like a lot of you, I kind of had my doubts after the trailer. I thought, well, he looks alright-ish, but he sounds all wrong. And then looking at him in the second trailer, I thought, wait a minute, how tall is he? About 5'4"? But of course, if you look at actually that clip of Harrison Ford surprising Alden Ehrenreich at Entertainment Tonight to congratulate him on the movie, when they stand up, they're about the same height. Although Harrison Ford is like 75, it is possible he isn't as tall as he was in the 70s. It happens. From the first minute he was on screen, it was like, yeah, this is Han Solo. I'm perfectly cool with that. Yeah, I'm completely buying him. Very, very blokey, man's man male protagonist. There are two female principals. One of them's a robot, of which more later, and the other one is kind of hot, but without spoiling it, maybe not to be trusted. And yeah, that's the other thing. If this is the movie that the dude bros decided to stay away from because they're sick of the social justice warriors, there's a character in this who could be, if you were choosing to interpret it as this way, regarded as a savage parody of your social justice warriors. You've got the robot L3, voiced and I think mocapped by the great Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who I think is kind of meant to be a sort of angry robot suffragette. She's a kind of equal rights for robots activist. But she does kind of come across as a parody of your angry feminists. So, like I say, if the dude bros decided to stay away from Star Wars because they're sick of the feminists and the SJWs, that was a big mistake, because this is kind of the movie they've been waiting for, if that's the way you want to interpret it. I don't think that this movie was made with some kind of, deliberate anti-feminist kind of subtext, but you can certainly read one in there if you want. But if it wasn't a boycott, if it wasn't the hashtag boycott Solo boys doing this, then what was it? Well, again, I think this maybe is about expectations. Again, I was not expecting this to be a movie of any great weight and import. I was not hoping for a movie of any great weight and import. I wanted a space western. But the thing is, Star Wars movies, for better or worse, have kind of been about great weight and import, haven't they? Whereas Solo's kind of just a bit of fun. It's maybe the Star Wars franchise's equivalent of the Marvel franchise's Ant-Man or Spider-Man Homecoming. The one that's not a big deal. The one that's not all about big world building. The one that's not all about the massive heavy themes. The one that's just content to be a bit of disposable fun, and that's good enough. And if you compare how Solo's done at the box office with, say, how Ant-Man and Spider-Man Homecoming have done, perhaps, the lesser movies in the Marvel canon, well, it crapped all over Ant-Man. Ant-Man opened with 58 million. Spider-Man Homecoming did better, did 117 million. But that, again, at the time was regarded as a bit of an alarming dip, both in terms of how Marvel movies usually open and also in terms of how Spider-Man movies usually open. Although it's worth pointing out that of the 6 Spider-Man movies we've had in the last couple of decades across the 3 Spider-Man franchises we've now had, the one that had the biggest opening weekend was Spider-Man 3, i.e. the one everybody now agrees was crap. So the big opening weekend and becoming a beloved installment in the franchise are not necessarily the same thing. So if this movie is underperforming, why might this be? Alright, bit of insight into it. I am not going out on tour this autumn. I've got a couple of things potentially lined up that might be taking the place of going out on tour this autumn. But I, for the first time, I'm not going out on tour this autumn. Every year since 2014, I've been touring in the spring, going out to Edinburgh for the summer, coming back from Edinburgh and touring again in the autumn. This year I'm not. I've just finished this year's spring tour, and then that's it. I'm going to Edinburgh, and then after Edinburgh it's just going to be like random gigs and other projects. So why am I not going out? Well, part of the thing is I've noticed that my numbers are starting to dip. I never get massive numbers, but even by my standards, it was still worthwhile doing. They were still good fun shows, and still enough people were turning up to make it financially worthwhile, but the numbers were dipping. They were. Now, okay, it's now over 2 years since I'm not on the Now Show. Alright, now my profile has been largely built up and maintained by my continued presence on the radio. I am no longer on the radio. It is perhaps inevitable that my profile is going to start dipping unless I can do things to yank it back up again, of which more in due course. Hold that thought. Wait for this plane. But there's also the fact that you can saturate your own market. You can basically wear out your own audience if you're not careful. And it's not that people start liking you any less, but what they do is they become less excited by you. If people know that I'm going to come out on tour twice a year, then there is never any urgency to come and see me. Mitch will be back in 6 months, we'll go and see him then. So you can basically, you can exhaust your audience's excitement with what you do. And I think that's what Star Wars might be in danger of doing. Now, you think back to the days of the original trilogy. The original trilogy came out at 3-year intervals, 77, 80, 83. And there was only ever 3 of them. And as far as anybody knew at the time, that was it. There was only ever going to be 3 of them. And they were a big deal. They were event movies. Okay, the first one wasn't supposed to be an event movie, but the minute it came out, it became very apparent that it was. And then numbers 2 and 3, or numbers 5 and 6, if you're going to be a Star Wars bore about it, were the biggest event movies of their respective summers. They were a big deal. You know, we've been waiting for them for 3 years when they came out. And then again, the prequels, all right, they were badly written, atrociously acted, CG-ridden pish, but they were a big deal. Badly written, atrociously acted, CG-ridden pish. Again, they were the biggest movies of their respective summers. And there was only ever the 3 of them, and there were 3-year intervals between each release. Now, Solo is not only the 4th Star Wars movie to come out in less than 2.5 years, it's the 2nd Star Wars movie to come out in less than 6 months. Now, if you think about this, if these movies were coming out at the same kind of schedule as the old Star Wars movies were, we would still be 6 months away from the second one. We'd still have a 6 months wait for the follow-up to Force Awakens. That would still be 6 months away. Whereas as it is, like I say, we're being deluged by the bloody things. And the fact that Solo is not just, I guess, the second Star Wars movie in 6 months, but the fact that the one it's following is the first one that a lot of people really didn't like, even if they were completely wrong to do so. It's exhausting its currency. That's what I'm trying to say. It's wearing out its own specialness. It's just not as big a deal when a Star Wars movie comes out as it used to be. And as that it really should be, because that was kind of the whole point of Star Wars. Now, people have raised this point elsewhere, and people have countered it by, again, bringing up the Marvel movies. And I'm going to be a bit hypocritical here, because on the one hand, I am comparing Solo to the Marvel movies, but on the other hand, I'm pointing out that that's not an entirely valid comparison. Because some people, Grace Randolph's pointed out on her channel, that you can't say that the Star Wars movies are coming out too close together, because look at the Marvel movies. For 10 years, they've been coming out 2 a year, and it hasn't made any difference to them. Well, I will point out that in actual fact, some of the lesser Marvel movies, and we've already now got our head around the idea that there are such things as greater and lesser entries in the Marvel canon, if you like, and that Ant-Man and Spider-Man Homecoming were maybe among the lesser movies, and that how Solo is doing in terms of box office is kind of comparable to them. That's kind of always been the point of Marvel, that you get 2 a year, and that some of them are a big deal and some of them are less a big deal. Star Wars, that's not the way it's always been. Star Wars were few and far between, and they were all a big deal. I'm not sure Star Wars is as big a deal as it used to be, and I don't think it's because the movies aren't good. Like I say, I thought Solo was great, and I thought Last Jedi was great. But even if I'm not necessarily in a minority on that one, but it's by no means a universally held opinion. I don't think it's because the movies aren't as good as they used to be. I just think that by definition, when Star Wars movies are coming out with more frequency than new seasons of Game of Thrones, then Star Wars is just going to start feeling a bit less special. And also, that's the thing, is it's the first summer release. Well, it's not even a summer release, it's a spring release. It was a really weird release date, actually. I mean, you couldn't even hit May the 4th. You bring it out in May, but not on May the 4th. What the hell are you thinking? So I think that may be what's happening. I think Star Wars is kind of exhausting its cachet through overexposure. In fact, I don't think it's going the same way as the DC universe, which, let's face it, is just completely floundering at the moment because, well, those movies aren't good. They're really not. Apart from Wonder Woman, which was great. So I don't think Star Wars is in the kind of crisis that some people think it is, but I think maybe they could step off the gas a little if they want to stay as big a deal as Star Wars has always been meant to be. All right, coming back to the point I made earlier on about how I'm going to have to find things to do in the autumn to fill in for the fact they're not touring, and also about the fact that, you know, maybe my profile is starting to go down a little bit because I'm not on the radio anymore. I'm going to make a bit of an appeal now. It's an appeal I made on Twitter, and I think I made it in the last podcast as well, but just in general. And this is not an appeal on behalf of me in particular, it's an appeal on behalf of your online independent creators everywhere. When we put something up online, whether it's like a song or a video, a bit of animation, just like a blog like this, something like this, and it gets a couple of thousand likes and maybe like 100 retweets on Twitter, or a couple of thousand likes on Facebook and a couple of hundred shares on Facebook, that's kind of annoying. And that sounds really ungrateful, and I'm aware of that. I'm aware that I'm possibly being a cheeky sod here. But it is kind of annoying when people like it, but don't retweet it. If one of us, whether it's one of me and my fellow comedians, or an animator, or a band, or something, somebody who maybe isn't, you know, in the big leagues media-wise, or isn't on TV, isn't signed to a major label, whatever that, when we put something up online, if you like it enough to click like, plain. I was kind of getting to an important point there. Sorry, I shouldn't really be doing this in the garden because it's quite noisy, but my neighbours are having DIY done. So if I was doing this in the living room, you just get this all the way through it. So as it is, just got to be out here with the planes. As I was saying, one of us independent creators, when we put something up online that you like, whether it's a video or a song or a bit of animation or a blog or whatever, if you like it enough to hit the like button, please consider hitting the retweet button as well, or the share button. Because it's great that you like it, and it's gratifying that you like it, but it doesn't actually help us in any material way when you hit like. It does help us in a material way when you hit retweet or share. Because the whole point of this is we're trying to reach people with this stuff. And we're trying to reach as many people as possible with this stuff. And you might look at my Twitter stats and go, dude, you got like 52,000 followers or whatever it is. Why the hell should I, with my paltry 100 and something, bother to retweet you? Yeah, I've got 52,000 followers of people who already know who I am. If I'm going to keep doing this, I need to start reaching the people who don't know who I am. And that's where we need you. See, the thing is, you can't make something viral. I lose track of the number of meetings I've been to for some project or another when they're trying to launch a TV show or trying to launch some kind of website, when some Tarquin will say, yeah, so what we're going to do, right, is we're going to make a viral video. No, you're not. You're going to make a video. Whether it goes viral is in no way up to you. So if our stuff is to go viral, which is what we're all hoping for, what we're all, holding out for, it has to start with you guys. It doesn't start with us. We can't do anymore. Once we put it up and posted it, there's nothing else we can do. Okay, we can sort of, post it over and over and over and over and over again, like, 6 or 7 times a day until you get sick of the sight of us. But ultimately, if something like that is going to take off, it's kind of down to the fans. So, speaking for me and all the other online creators, if we post something and you like it, please retweet it as well. Okay? Or share it as well. That's the only way it gains any traction. That's the only way it gains any momentum. All right. End of bleat. You guys have been wonderful. Just for that, I'm not even going to bother tacking on about Patreon. I'm going to assume that most of you know what that is and most of you are on board already. But yeah, so there you go. Some of my thoughts on Solo and my thoughts on how you can really help the independent creators that you admire. Okay. Right. Well, oh yeah, Distraction Club, June the 5th. We just added Rich Hall to the bill. So if you're in London, within reach of London, do not come to Distraction Club on June 5th. Okay. See you soon.